The way through the challenge is to get still and ask yourself, what is the next right move? Not think about, oh, I got all of this stuff. What is the next right move? And then from that space, make the next right move and the next right move. And not to be overwhelmed by it, because you know your life is bigger than that one moment. You know you're not defined by what somebody says is a failure for you, because failure is just there to point you in a different direction.
Even after recent tumultuous changes in values, we still live in a world where women are grossly underrepresented, undervalued, and underpaid. A world where women make up the majority of the population, but a minority at the top of almost every business and social sector. Just 5% of Fortune 500 CEOs and 20% of boardroom seats, where women earn on an average a 20% discount for the same job. Where 60% of lawyers are women, but only constitute 15% of equity partners. Where the percentage of female judges is criminally unrepresentative and college professors are only 30% female, where most professions are still identified by female gender, e.g. women doctor, female pilot, women engineers, and crucially, in an environment where female mediation, collaboration, and cooperation is desperately needed, politics. Still, only a quarter of the seats in U.S. Congress are filled by women. The U.S. is also one of a very few democratic countries that has never had a female head of state or deputy head of state. This is an outline of why we need equality of opportunity. This discussion is about the how of making those adjustments, the actual practical proposals to make the changes. We owe it to our kids and our kids' kids to finally, and without further delay, procrastination, or fear of confrontation, make these changes.
What does gender equality mean to you?
Opportunity without questioning that opportunity is in any way limited by a person's gender. You know, that to me is the opportunity there. Because if it's not, that's where we have to figure out how to make that opportunity happen.
Anna, what do you think? What does gender equality mean to you?
Well, just that. It means equal. And I think when the first thing that when you said gender equality, what does it mean? Well, of course it means we're equal, but it means removing a narrative that we have in our head, because we are all born, even just for one moment, we're all born equal. And then something happens immediately. You start to become a product of the story that you were told. It's just how the world works. It's how the human brain works. It's just how it works. And so when I think about gender equality, you know, we all start at the exact same place. And somehow this narrative comes in and starts to create these inequalities. And so when I think about gender equality, what it is, what it should be, and what's in the way, it is this, I don't know if it's a blindfold or a removal or a new narrative, or if it's a removing of the earplugs out of our ears and conditioning ourselves to the truth. But maybe that's it. Maybe gender equality to me is a conditioning of the mind to the truth, because we are all created equal, at least for those very first few moments.
Oh my goodness, I'm listening to you and I'm ready to explode. Whitney, go ahead, please tell me, what does gender equality mean to you?
So I think the other two panel members said it wonderfully. To me, and I was telling this story just the other day, when I was growing up, so there's 5 kids in my family. I have an identical twin sister who's actually a lieutenant colonel in the Air Force, which is a totally different story. But 4 girls, 1 boy, and my mom always told us growing up that we could be anything that we wanted to be. And so kind of a progressive idea in the 70s and 80s as you're growing up, but it never occurred to me that there wasn't opportunities out there that wouldn't be open to me just because of my gender. And that's probably why I was open to joining the Army when that opportunity came. So I really like what Sarah had to say about it's about opportunity and providing that opportunity without giving conditional limitations to what that opportunity is.
We're equal, but being equal does not mean that we're the same. It means we are different. And I think where the divide starts is in those differences and these perceptions that, you know, one difference or one set of values or one set of strengths perhaps is more important than another set of strengths. And that in fact, they're actually very complementary. And somehow, I believe we're competing against the complementary strengths instead of bringing them together.
We all come from slightly different or dramatically different points of view. And the narrative that we heard when we were young, or in the organization or organizations we've become part of, really does shape people's thinking.
So that's really impactful. And it takes us into the question of asking, how do we change that?
We continue to learn and we continue to evolve, but they've always been on the forefront of change. So integration, we just celebrated, I think, 75 years of integration of the Army. The Army's strength is its diversity. And I think what you've seen over the last couple decades as women have increasingly gotten into higher positions, a institution that understands what diversity brings to the table and the opportunities that you can exploit from a diverse population. And women bring a different way of thinking to a problem set. Just in my 24-year career, I've seen a huge change in how the Army has approached inclusion of women into all aspects of operations.
How a woman thinks is so different to how a man thinks, and the values of what that brings to the table.
It starts super early, and yes, the gift of parenting is one of the first places you hear stories. So that is so important, and we're going to talk about parenting. But even then, it starts so early. Like, I remember being 5, 6 years old and seeing on television this TV show. I'm going to date myself here, but this TV show Friday night that we watch as a family, or at least my mother and I would watch, called Solid Gold. And I wanted to be, from the age of 5 years old, I wanted to be a solid gold dancer, because that's what I saw women doing. Music videos, you would watch MTV. I came up in the era of MTV and videos, and women were to be beautiful, and men were to be the women were to be backup dancers. Men were to be, on the stage or in front. These are the messages that of how television, movies, pop culture, advertising starts to portray, and it all works on your psyche. You can't be what you can't see.
Starting early is the important messaging, in that the moment we start to change conditioning, it will help us turn around and change the messaging.
For our children to see us be our best selves. And so I would echo what Anna said about, don't apologize for doing what you love. Her paradigm was her mother was a working professional woman. So I think it's really important, not only for our own children, but for all children to see and be exposed to women doing different things. As a parent, you ought to curate what your kids are watching, and not only watching, but seeing.
My generation has grown up in the Army and is now assuming leadership roles. So it's just, it takes time to build the next generation of leaders. And actually here in New York City Recruiting Battalion, I am very fortunate because my senior enlisted advisor, my command sergeant major, my partner, is also a woman, because we are all examples, not just for those that come after us, but those that we work with.
Destiny follows story. And if you do not like where you are and you do not like your existing current destiny, then you have to change your story, because whatever it is you tell yourself, your capability, whatever you see that you're going to try to emulate, it's usually a new story. And whatever that story is, that becomes your destiny.
Is our role in encouraging and being a sounding board, and maybe also dispelling some myths if they have doubts. We ought to be open to those conversations and not feel that in any way, shape, or form it's taboo to talk about what it's like to be a woman in name your situation.
When you tell your daughter that she is being emotional, irrational, yet you tell your son that he is being strong, smart, you are teaching your daughter to doubt her feelings, to question her beliefs. And so when a man mistreats her, she will think back to what you said when she was under your roof, and she will believe that those gut feelings we speak of are merely irrational thoughts. While your son believes every thought he has is fair and right. Be careful how you raise your daughters. Be careful how you raise your sons.
Hi, I'm Asia Mayrock, and I'm a 22-year-old best-selling author, activist, performer, and college student, and I'm from New York. Voting is personally very important to me because I realize that oftentimes it can feel like there's not a lot that we can do at the government level, and it's very frustrating when things are happening and there are injustices happening and it feels like the everyday person can't be a part of change. But that's actually not true. And for most of my life, I believed that I didn't need to vote, or that my vote didn't really matter. But as I started to get more educated on not just regular elections, but also the midterms, I realized just how crucial every single vote is. Women weren't allowed to vote until 1920, and Black voting rights weren't protected until 1965. So the power that we have and the duty that we all, as young people especially, do have to go and to register to vote and to vote in midterm elections is really crucial. As a young woman, I want equal access and equal opportunity to women's reproductive rights. And so to me, that's a really important issue and something that I would like all young girls and young women to have access to. In 2018, 69 million young people are eligible to vote. That's unbelievable. We really do have the power to sway an entire election, to go out there. I think that if all young people do register and go and vote, it takes 2 minutes. We can really voice our concerns through each vote, and we can really make the difference that we hope to see in this country. Your vote matters. 2 minutes is all it takes. Register to vote at vote.dosomething.org. Let's do this.
What about some of the backlash of space that we're all in, where men are not prepared to turn around and accept the equality that we want to engender going forward? What do I do to get that to change your mind, mister?
What the Army's done over time is, created an environment where they try to bring inclusion and equality to the process of both recruitment, assessment, and promotion. But how do we make a better assessment process so we are picking the right people for the right job that have the right talent? Just recently, the Army has decided that it's going to eliminate the photo, the Department of the Army photo that also accompanies boards, so that you're not having that other unconscious bias seeping into the process by looking at somebody's picture before you look at their file. And their file stands as itself. And they're also eliminating any indications of gender as well as ethnicity on the record brief that accompanies that.
It still doesn't help me get past the situation where we have still got powerful people at the top, and typically the percentage indicates that a lot of those powerful people are men. How do we change their minds? How do we change the people that are already there?
A culture is defined by the worst behavior its leader or leadership allows. And so when I think about equality, I think about what are we going to allow as women? Like, are we just going to allow it? Or are we going to speak up and say, I actually disagree with you, and I actually think you're wrong, and I actually need you to hear me out. I need you to stand in my shoes, and let's reassess the situation. I honestly do think so much of what we're going through, the same way that we were told to be a certain persona or figure, well, they were too. So, I mean, it's not like they're guilty in doing this by charge. They're a product of the story they've been told too. And so I think until we can both just start having these honest dialogues and go, well, hold on, not so fast.
Right.
Look at it from that point of view. But you can't just allow it to continue happening. You just have to put it out in the open. And I think that's how we're going to start getting change happening faster.
Men feel very, very comfortable saying, I disagree.
Right.
As women, we feel as comfortable to say, I disagree, or that is not an acceptable behavior, or you offended me. And not to do it in a threatening way, but to explain your perspective and your point of view. And we ought to do that, especially to show other women who may not have the benefit of the same upbringing or experience, that it's absolutely okay.
The men have owned and dictated and had such a strong hold and footprint in the work environment, in the workspace. You know, women are now realizing, hey, I don't need to be a housekeeper. I can run a company. I don't need to be at home. And in the same space you're in is that I think men today's generation, in my experience, are much more open to being the house mother and the house parent rather than the one that is actually out the breadwinner.
I think we're moving in the right direction. I'm not gonna get into a philosophical discussion, because now you have 1,500 women so far that have assessed into these traditional male-dominated roles, and they are across every single division in the Army. They're on almost every single post in the Army. You have, I think, 42 women that have graduated from Ranger School, which was an elite school that 5 years ago nobody thought a woman could pass, and we've got 42 women in a very short period of time that have passed that. To the larger point of just kind of breaking the gender stereotypes. The military has also recognized families and recognized that, even though a soldier serves, it's actually the entire family that's part of the Army, because you're subjected to, moving, you're subjected to late nights or deployments, etc. We have a paternity leave policy in the Army. You can get up to 21 days of paternity leave for second caregiver leave. Women are allowed 12 weeks of maternity leave after they have a child, so that's a start. It's a start in the right direction to recognize that roles need to be amended, and we need to understand that we're all in this together, and we need to figure out a balanced way to get the best production out of our workforce, regardless of whether those are men or women.
Because you come from a strong corporate space. How do we extrapolate some of the stuff that Whitney talks about that seems to be shifting in the Army, because the women are realizing, hey, hold it, mate, there's space for both of us. I mean, what are some of the learnings there that we could be using in helping to change minds today?
First, at any HR policy, whether it be leave policies, comp policies, benefit policies, to make sure there is equity in them between the two genders.
It's going to take the employee base holding leaders accountable. So you can't just hope, well, leadership's got this. No, you're going to have to hold them accountable. You've got to get in there. You've got to challenge them. You have to say, I want to see those numbers. I want to know. I want to see the panel that was slated. I want to know that you interviewed, that we tried this. I want to know.
Some of the things that you're actually talking about are kind of scary, because once somebody's an employee of a company and a corporation, Employees typically find it very daunting, very frightening, very threatening, very intimidating. Is their job on the line if they kind of question? And that can be put to anybody. I mean, even Whitney yourself, if anybody questions anything, does that mean that they become blacklisted? Does that mean that they become, that, you know, you can't, don't just watch that one, she's trouble. You know what I'm saying?
I would suggest if there is a nervousness of speaking up or questioning, as long as you're aligning to your company's values. I mean, that's when you joined the company, that's what you said. They chose you because they believed you were a part of their value system, and you chose them because those values aligned to you. So use that as your. But you're the fortunate few. I mean, what about the people?
Well, I think when you are aligned with your company's values, to Anna's point, it's probably going to be fine. But we do have to acknowledge employees often are fearful.
Agreed.
Whether it's legitimate or not. And I will tell, so we put a program in place last year that is called, it's our employee advocate program.
The Army is a reflection of society. The military is a reflection of society. You know, we have the same problems in the military that we have in society. We're dealing with the same struggles and the same challenges as everybody. We're not immune to them.
It's strange when you think about what are the problems that women have over what are the problems that men have. You know, somebody recently said to me that, you know, whenever you hear about a fighting, a war, a killing, a gunning, another shooting, why is it always a man and not a woman that's out there shooting down, you know, the public, or going in and breaking it, doing a break-in?
It's going to be what you tolerate. So if you continue this tolerance and this acceptance, and I don't want to rock the boat, I don't want to be vocal, I just, you know, then that's what's going to happen. So I'm not saying you have to go out and be a force in the world, but you just simply have to be confident enough to say, I'm not willing to accept that. I'm not willing to tolerate that. I'm not willing to let that way of thinking continue to go on.
I just want to tag a little bit onto what Anna said. I hate the word tolerance. I think it's it gives people an excuse. Oh, I'm going to tolerate it. And it's like, no. If we need to use our voices, we need to use our actions to make the world a more equitable place. And if I had to boil it down to one thing, it probably would be not being silent. Because when you are silent, it is always interpreted as agreement. And however uncomfortable you may be speaking up, progress will continue to come very, very slowly if you don't speak up when you see something where there's clear inequality, inequity, sexism, etc.
I guess what I would say is, obviously we got to continue the conversation. There's a lot of relevant conversations going on right now in America. I mean, 2020 has been an unprecedented year, and you know, we need to take that momentum and we need to look at where we can improve. America deserves the best leadership that it can have, and that's in all of its institutions across, you know, in the universities and corporate world, in the military, and that starts with diversity and it starts with inclusion. So, you know, until we get to a point where, you know, women are as represented across our institutions as they are in society, I think we're going to consistently struggle. The good news is that we're continuing to move forward. Again, in the Army, it's gone from about 12-13% female population to 18% this year. 25% of our recruits were female. So it's going to take time to build that into the process, but the policies are there. The change is there. There's a momentum right now that that I think America's ready to take things to the next level for diversity and inclusion across the board. And that's when we're talking about minorities, when we're talking about gender. And those of us that are in leadership positions, regardless of where we are, we could be in middle management or, even or higher up in corporate management. It is our mantle to move the ball forward on the field, so to speak, so that we can continue for the next generation of women to come before us, the next generation of minorities, or, those that were excluded to come after us, so that they have the opportunities that we continue to pave that way for. So that would be what I would say is the one thing that I would do, is that we have a role to play to move that ball down the field.
I feel that I'd like to close on one line and say, in the words of Barack Obama, we are the change we seek. I mean, I just think that is such a fantastic line from him that kind of says it all. I think that the session's been absolutely fantastic. In conclusion, I think to the words of Anna, that we have to look at our narratives, explore them. In the words of Whitney, we have to push the margins all the time and get those decisions moving. And Sarah, I think you said it all when you said, don't tolerate anything. Be the voice for yourself, be the voice for your neighbor, be the voice for the person that can't speak for themselves. I think in all of that said, I just want to say thank you all so much for participating today. It's been absolutely amazing.
Dear sisters, my whole life I've struggled with trusting women, from bullying to body shaming to slut shaming other women. I heard girls say things like, I love her, but she's a dirty hoe. She'd be so much prettier without that nose. She's not that talented, she'll never make it. Think of the ratio. These are your sisters. We don't exist in silos. I propose you outgrow your opposition to one another. Your experience is of each other. If we're fighting for equality, there has to be camaraderie. So this is a letter to every woman who knows better than to scarlet letter their sister, to whisper or backstab a sister. There is no progress when we march in different directions. Correction, there is no progress when we march in discriminatory sections. White women, show up for your sisters of color. Straight women, show up for your sisters of LGBTQ plus women. Show up. Have the guts to overlook differences, because really the difference is as drastic as progress or no progress. We can't afford to divide each other. Since early days, we are taught to compare and compete with one another. You are not devalued even if the woman next to you appears to be perfect. You are not devalued if your sisters are achieving greatness. You are always of value if you value you. Dear sisters, take a look in the mirror and see yourself a little clearer. What type of women do you show up for? Hold yourself accountable. Show up for the sisters that you might not know or understand. Show up for the sisters that you might not like at all. Show up for all of us. Because unity begins with you and who you choose to show up for.
Hi, Muna Ellison here, publisher of New York Moose Magazine. Thank you all so much for joining us today. We hope you had as much fun listening to our panel discussion and all of our amazing injections of information. The Fearless Girl just blew me away. On stock exchange, who knew? But we did it. The ringing of the bell for Equality Day. We hope to see you again soon. Do take a moment and take the opportunity to read the quotes again. There are some really inspiration comments made by some inspiring women. And we look forward to seeing you soon. And thank you to the Army and to Aflac for joining us. And please remember to vote. And you know what? Remember to vote early.